Good evening, everybody.
Kabbalah Taraf, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay. So yesterday we did Shulchan Aruch in Aleph, and then I saw afterwards that there was a piece of the Bet Yosef that we didn't do with another piece. So I'm going to read it now. So it says like this. Katala Mordechai, because there were some things that we said in the Shulchan Aruch yesterday which were not really covered by the Bet Yosef that we did. There was some more details that needed to be read there. So it says here like this, right? The Mordechai says, Mashma de'asur la'asut melacha afilu al yedei goy. So, right, it says that the language of the Talmud, he says, it implies that you also cannot do labor on Erev Pesach, even with a goy, even by way of a goy. Kimo melachat dechol hamoed. Just like Chol Hamoed, he says, right? Just like Chol Hamoed, you cannot do melacha, you cannot do labor by way of a goy. Same thing also applies to Erev Pesach as well. So he says, therefore, right, the custom he says now that they have where the goy will like sew for them, on Erev Pesach. Sew some clothing, whatever. Begadim chadashim bebeto. So he says, right, that they're making like new clothing, right? They're making new clothing by sewing them. So they do it all day, right? Erev Pesach. Even for free, he says. So in other words, he says this should not be done. The goy should not be making you a new clothing, right? On the Erev Pesach. Another thing he says here is that, but yesterday we said the opposite, right? We said that, there's another opinion that says you're allowed to do by way of a goy. There's two opinions brought down there. So this is the first opinion, right? Which is brought down. And then, right, he goes on, this is also a Jew, who, whatever, should not do a haircut for his friend on the eve of Passover, right, after midday. So it says there's no differentiation whether you're taking money or not. Either way, it's forbidden, right? And this is what we saw, by the way, in the Shulchan Aruch, that he says that even for free, you shouldn't do labor. So this was the source, that he was quoting from. So what's the reason why it's forbidden, right? Even if it's for free. So it says because they're like real laborers, like in other words, doing a haircut is like really work, people get paid for that, right? It's not a hobby, right? Doing haircuts, it's a job. So that's why. So this right is the source for what we saw in the Shulchan Aruch. So therefore, right, to sum it up, what we saw in the Shulchan Aruch yesterday was like this, right? That you're not allowed to do labor on Erev Pesach after midday, and that's even for free, as we just saw over here. And also, not only that, but it says that you really shouldn't do it by way of a goy, right? But it seems like the Shulchan Aruch was lenient by that, regarding the goy. But regarding the issue of of doing it for free, he was stringent. So I hope you understand me, right? What I just told you. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay. So we'll go on, right? Then we'll do now bet. So we'll go back to the tour and we'll read over there. Right. So he says here like this. Katav Avi Azri, this rabbi says, Dafka she'oseh melacha listaker, right? He said it only applies when you're making it, doing it for money. Just the opposite of what we just saw in the other opinion, right? But it says, but if he wants to do fix for himself, like obviously he's not going to charge himself, right? So, that's okay. So, then he goes on, V'yom tov, v'yachel mi shekotev sfarim le'atzmo. This is also somebody who's writing books for himself. Right? He's taking notes, whatever, making a notebook for himself, whatever it is. Derech limudo, right? Because he's learning that topic. Mutar kol hayom, right? You can do that all day. On Erev Pesach. Haolech mimakom shenahagu la'asot, makom shelo nahagu la'asot. Okay, so let's see the Bet Yosef what he says here. So he says, right, that this quote that he gave from the Avi Ezri regarding, making money and not making money, Ken Katab Rosh, he says, also the Rosh wrote this, right? But as we said, regarding this, he was stringent, the Shulchan Aruch, and said even if you're doing it for free, it's still forbidden. So that would, include also you're doing it for yourself. Let's say, you're like, right, one of those guys who likes to do his own hair, right? He has a hair cutting machine. He cuts his own hair, right? Whatever. He doesn't go to the barber, right? There are some people like that. I know somebody like that. I won't tell you who it is. Shh, I won't tell you. Right? But anyway, right? So, what do you call it? He says that, that even that's forbidden. So, you got to watch out. That would mean that, you should get your hair cut before. Don't wait till the afternoon, right? Because once midday comes, no more haircut for you, right? That's it. Okay, so, but as we said, right, midday is not exactly 12 o'clock. It depends on the season, right? So nowadays, in New York City, midday is 1 o'clock. So if you want to do it at 12 o'clock, you still have time. Right, finish it off, and by 1 o'clock, you'll be already nice and spiffy with a nice haircut. No problem, right? So anyway, that's the first part of the Bet Yosef. He just brings the source over here. No, nothing major. So here is the second part. Right? So he says here, so yeah. לשבת ויום טוב לא תופר כמה, לתיקון בעלמא כמה. Yeah, I think this is, we should go back to the tour and see this inside. So the tour goes on here, right? He has a whole discussion over here, right, about this issue. So he says like this, that by the way, this topic that he's talking about here is very practical and it applies to many things, many issues in halakha. So good to understand this, right? The concept here. So he says like this, right? That ההולך ממקום שנהגו לעשות מקום שלא נהגו לה, right? So what about if you go from a place where the custom is to do labor, right? And you go to a place where the custom is not to do. As we said, right, in the morning before midday, depends on the custom, right, of the place. After midday, it's already forbidden, right, according to halacha. But before midday, it's a matter of custom. So he says here that, right. So what about if you go from one place to the other? What happens with you there? Or the opposite way, right? The opposite. Oh, so he says, right, that you should do according to the place where you are staying there. So what does that mean? Wherever your permanent residence is, right, you should do according to that. Because after all, that's where you live, right? You may come to visit some other place, but you don't live there, So therefore, right, the rule is when you go from one place to another, you're always going to do, as a general rule, right? You're always going to do according to the place where you live, and not the place where you're visiting only. Okay, so so therefore, right, if he wants to stay where he went, right? He wants to move to a different area. He's not going back to where he was, right? So then, right, Yaseh, Kamin Hagam, you should do like their custom over there. Whether it's stringent or lenient. So this is a very important thing, to understand. Why? Because, sometimes people move, right, from one place to another, right? One country to another, so forth and so on. So what do you got to do? Right? When you move, you have to take on the customs of the new place that you go into, right? Don't say now, yeah, I came from there, nostalgia, I'm a very nostalgic person, Halacha doesn't recognize nostalgia. You know what I mean? So what does that mean? Right? You do according to where you move to, right? You move to a new place, you got to the custom over there. So therefore, right, if a person, let's say, the classic example, right? He moves to Eretz Israel, makes aliyah. And he came from a different country, right? Let's say he came from Iran, right? Or whatever, right? He came from, I don't know, God knows what, right? Whatever it is, right? Bukhara, or he came from, Morocco, right? So what should he do? Right now, right? So don't bring your old customs with you like a bunch of luggage. You know what I mean? Leave them behind. At the customs. The customs counter, right? And now you're going to take on the new customs of Eretz Israel. This is what you're going to do. Customs don't go with you, right? From country to country. It doesn't work like that. Right? That's the way that's what the person has to know. I think somebody asked me about this already, in this class, right? We talked about this before a little bit. But here is a classic example, right, of that concept. So yeah, so if you go to Eretz Israel, don't tell people over there, yeah, I do Moroccan customs. Who cares about Moroccan customs? Please, like wake up and smell the coffee. You're in a different country now. Don't worry about your nostalgia. Whatever. Who cares? You can't do that. By the way, these rules that I'm telling you here are not just, some folklore, right? This is from the Talmud, these rules. You should know, right? They come from the Talmud. So, and they're also brought down in the poskim, as well. So, that's what you got to do. It's an obligation. Okay.
Aren't some customs like the people become required to hold by them after a while? Or is it on, are you talking
I'm
about?
sorry, what was that again? What was the question?
So we had talked before about like some customs after a while, like they have to hold, like some Ashkenazi customs have to hold by it, like the kitniot.
Oh, okay. So you're asking about Ashkenazim dafka?
Well, just, I mean, like, wouldn't it be the same thing for, Moroccan customs? If they've held by them for so long, then don't they have to still hold by?
Right. So here's the thing, right? That the truth is the law is very clear about this. When you go to a different country, right, or a different, even to a different city, and the customs are different there, so you have to adopt the new customs there because the customs don't go with you. You know why that is, by the way? Because the whole concept of customs is a function of where you live. It's not a function of who you are. You know what I mean? It's not your genetics, right? Like, Esther, she likes to talk about genetics, right? Genealogy. But, your customs don't depend on your genealogy or your DNA, right? It's a matter of where you live. It's a function of where you live, the customs. This whole concept of customs, it's not a matter of where you come from or where you came from. It's not the issue. So, that's what it is basically, right? Some people have a hard time with this, they can't they can't conceptualize this. It's like, what? Me? What do you have? But I'm a Georgian Jew, like, well, you want me to do now what Israeli customs? I'm Georgian. Okay, so who cares, You left to Georgia, didn't you? Right? So if you want to stay there, you should have stayed there. It's up to you. You know what I mean? So by the way, that's what I did also. When I went to Eretz Israel, I went there to live there. I didn't go there to visit. You know what I mean? I was intending to stay there. And I'm still intending to go back. Right? That's my intention. So it's getting a little bit delayed, but it's in the works. Whatever. And so, when I went to Eretz Israel, I took on the customs of Eretz Israel. I was very happy to do that because I had a great rabbi, Baruch Hashem, the best rabbi in the world, and I did whatever he told me. Whatever he said. That was my rule. That's it, right? What's there to right? What's there to even think about? So now the question is like this: when I came back here, so what do you think I did? Right? And now I changed my customs again. Back to America. Right. So the answer is no. Why is that? Anybody have an answer? According to what I told you, you should know the answer. The answer is because I'm going back there, So if you're going back, you don't have to change your customs. Only if you're staying permanently in a certain place, right? Then you got to change. But if you're intending to go back there, you don't have to change your customs, But the truth is, right? Here's the tricky part, right? The tricky part is that it's all tricky, right? The tricky part is that America really doesn't have any customs, That's the thing. Because there's 50 different groups of Jews over here, each one with their own customs, you know what I mean? So there's no uniform custom in America. No such a thing like that. You have this, the Persians and the Iraqis, and you have the Russians, and you have the Georgians and the Bukharians, and this and that, right? Everybody. Hungarians, and you have by the way, the first from history, I hear that the first group that came here to America, the Jews, was Spanish Portuguese. They were like the first comers over here. Long time ago. Right? But now they're a minority, but at one time they were the first group that came. That's what I heard. I don't know. Whatever. You would think, right, the Ashkenazim who came here first, but it's not true, actually, right? Who discovered America, right? It was Columbus, right? He was a Spanish guy. So,
And he brought up
I'm sorry?
and
Yeah,
he brought all the Jews from Spain.
right. In fact, they say that he was Jewish. Columbus was Jewish himself.
Yes.
That's what I hear.
He was.
Okay, well, there you go, right? You can't argue with that, right? So he was the first Jew that came to America. Okay.
Okay.
Whatever.
I have evidence.
I'm sorry?
Shoshana. No, I'm telling Shoshana that I do have evidence about
Evidence, okay.
Christopher Columbus being.
Right, but Columbus
Yeah,
did not, I mean, if you're talking about America, United States, he did not actually come to America.
Right. No, I'm just joking
Oh,
with that.
Texas
But
is
the
full
truth is, right, that's just a joke, but because he didn't stay here, I think he went back, right?
So
You know.
actually, the first documented Jew in America was a Jew that came to Jamestown, Virginia.
Interesting. But I heard it was like,
Florida.
the first community that came here was Spanish Portuguese.
Right, I
I'm
think
not
the
talking
first
about
Jews may have
Columbus. I'm
been,
talking about in general.
but Lagardo was the first the first one to come to Jamestown.
What was his name?
Lagardo.
Where was
Also,
he from?
I
Where
think
was he
he's
from?
also Sephardic.
See, that sounds like a Spanish name. Yeah. Okay, well,
Well, cabeza
at
de
least
vaca
at
also.
least we agree on that, right? At least we agree on that. I'm sorry. Go.
Cabeza de vaca, he was a Jewish, and he was the first one to publish a book. And
Right.
he stayed in Florida, Texas,
Interesting.
all those areas. So
So
yeah.
anyway, right, there is no custom in America. You understand? Because you have like 50 different groups over here. God knows, or maybe 500. I don't know. I don't know how many groups you got here. So there's no custom. So therefore, right, when you come to America, what do? Right? What's the right the advice that we give you? Right? There's you have two choices, right? Either you become Sephardi or Ashkenazi, one or the other, right? Depending on what you are, right? In other words, what you were always, how you were born, whatever, right? Or how you converted, right? Whatever, right? So whatever it is, that's how it is. So when you come to America, the rule is, you got to be either Ashkenazi or Sephardi, one or the other, right? Depending on your ancestry, right? Whatever, and you don't have to keep the customs of any particular group, just in general, right? Sephardi customs, or in general, Ashkenazi customs, right? So what does that mean? If you're a Sephardi, you keep Shulchan Aruch, right? Maran. If you're Ashkenazi, you keep the Ramah, right? That's it. That's Ashkenaz. Very simple, right? No fancy stuff there, Very simple stuff, right? But no Kitzer Shulchan Aruch, right, Esther, right? No Kitzer. That we don't want. Okay. That's not really
I'm sorry,
yeah. The Kitzer Shulchan Aruch, the famous one is not really, for Sephardim, you know that, right? I'm telling you guys, it's not for Sephardim.
yes.
Yes, okay. Okay. We spoke about that already. We spoke about that. Okay, so right, that's the story. So as we said, right, this is the way it works with customs. And by the way, this is all backed up by sources, I'm not giving you my own ideas, my personal ideas. This is not my personal, this is all written in the Talmud and Poskim. You know what I mean? So I've researched this, by the way, extensively because, I was very curious about it. I mean, it's a very practical things, it's a little bit more practical than the right we spoke about yesterday, right? The Zafek, right? The what do you call it? Right? The crop, right? A little bit more practical. Okay. Right. So by the way, it turns out that the crop, is part of the stomach, Basically, that's what it is. But Shoshana says, right, that she pointed out that it's like the earlier stages, of the stomach, you know what I mean?
It's a holding organ.
Right, the holding organ. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So, that's what it is basically, right? But it's a part of the digestive system, whatever, like more or less, right? Whatever. It's a pre-digestive system, pre-digestion. Whatever you want to call it, right? That's what it is. Okay, whatever. That's from yesterday, right? But getting back to what we're doing today.
I have another question real quick.
Yes, yeah.
But didn't your rabbi write a kitzer as well would it have been like the kitzer for a Sephardim?
Right. So that's the thing, that the first kitzer that was written was by Rabbi Gansfried, That's the famous one that, everybody uses. You know what I mean? This is the one that they teach the ladies, in the Ashkenazi schools, right? Beit Yaakov. That was the first kitzer that was ever written. And then what happened was, that he brought this into, like into, what we call that, moda, he brought it into style, it became like a fashion. So then, like, another 50 rabbis, wrote their own kitzer after he did his kitzer, right? You know what I mean? So today you have like 50 kitzers going around. You know what I mean? You have this kitzer, that kitzer, right? Everybody's got their own kitzer, right? So By the way, what does the word kitzer mean in Hebrew? It means abbreviation, right? It's abbreviated. It's a short version, short and sweet, as they say, right? That's what a kitzer means. But anyway, right? The point is that you know, learning from a kitzer is not the best way to learn. By the way, it doesn't matter which kitzer it is. You know what I mean? Every kitzer is limited. You know why? Because it's only like one opinion. You know what I mean? You're not looking at the whole picture. The whole, like we're doing over here with the Bet Yosef. We're seeing the whole picture. From this side, from that side, right? From all the sides. Kitzer is not like that. It just tells you, yeah, this is forbidden, this is permitted. And that's like really boring. First of all, right? It's like not very exciting to learn that way, right? Yeah, this is permitted, this is forbidden. Why? I don't know. That's what it says. I have no idea. Right?
and it doesn't stick.
Okay, good. It's good what you're saying, right? Doesn't stick. You know who says this, by the way?
No.
What you just said? The Gaon Vilna, he says this, right? The Gaon Vilna. He says that when you learn Kitzer books, they don't stick. You don't remember anything. You forget. Goes in here, comes out there.
It's like grinding water, no?
Exactly. So it doesn't. It's not really very beneficial. That's that's what it is. And also you don't understand it. You don't get the sources. So it's not really a good way to learn Kitzer. You know what I mean? It's not the best way. But you know what it is? They teach it to the girls, and you know why that is? Because they don't want the girls, learning Talmud. That's like too complicated. You know what I mean? Only for smart girls like you, you can do stuff like that. You know what I mean? But regular girls, they can't do that. You know what I mean? You girls are exceptionally, gifted, right? Whatever. But most girls don't want to learn all this, these sources. You know what I mean? Rabbeinu Tam, and Rashi, and this and that, right? All this stuff, and Rashba, Only you girls want this stuff. I mean, nobody else wants it. Only you three. It's a hard sell, So, okay. So anyway, right, getting back to what we said, that that's the way it works with customs, right? So again, right, to reiterate that point, if you are going back to where you came, you don't adopt the new customs there. You're going back, so you got to keep the old customs, because you're going back there. That's the way it works, So I'm going back to Israel, hopefully one day, B'ezrat Hashem, right? So I'm not gonna, but the truth is, right, that it wouldn't make such a difference anyway, because either way, right, there I was Sephardi, here I'm Sephardi, so it wouldn't be really any difference, it'd be pretty much the same, so there's no really practical difference, pretty much the same thing. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, you have some groups over here, come, right, and they're ignorant, and they want to keep their, customs of the old country, you know what I mean? Like nostalgic, that's the way we did it in the old country, we're going to continue. All right, whatever, whatever. It is what, Okay, whatever, right? So that's the way it goes. So this whole discussion, by the way, I could talk longer about this, but I'm keep you here all night. I don't want to keep you here all night. So let's go on. So he says, right, that so he said that's only when you're in private, right? In private setting. So what does that mean? When you're in private setting, nobody's watching you, right? You're in your bedroom, right? Nobody sees you there. So then you do the customs of your old place because you're going back. But he says when you're in front of the people who are there, you have to do like them, that's the thing. Because otherwise they're gonna get start fighting with you, what are you doing? Our custom over here is not like that. How dare you, to do differently? Right? So the truth is, as we said, right, in America, there is no custom, so you can do whatever you want, pretty much. That's not the issue here, right? But we're talking about a place which has a custom, it's established custom there. In the old days, that's the way it was, by the way, in most places, there was something very established there, with the, big roots, so in those days, that's the way it was, if you did something different in front of them, they're going to fight with you. It's going to cause machloket, right? So he says, right, it's going to be machloket. So don't do in front of them, differently, right? That's what I tell people, by the way, also, if you're doing some kind of a leniency, right, in general, right, in halakha, let's say your rabbi, has like some leniencies, that he gives you, and other rabbis don't hold by his leniency. You know what I mean? So you're allowed to listen to your rabbi, that he's lenient regarding something, right? I have my own leniencies. The ones who ask me, they know, right? I have a lot of quirky stuff that I tell people, sometimes, right? Leniencies, because that's the way I hold. That's the way I learned it. That's the way I learned it. That's the way it comes out for me. So or my rabbi said so, right? Whatever, something like that, right? Whatever. So either way, right? If a rabbi gives you a certain leniency, and in the place where you live, right, they don't do that, right? They don't do that leniency. Nobody does it, right? You're like the only one. Okay. So then you should not do it in front of people, because they're gonna start saying, this guy's, he's a sinner, like he does all kinds of sins, So, you gotta watch out for that. You gotta be careful, in front of people, don't do leniencies that other people don't do over there, in that place. That would apply, by the way, even in America, because in America also, like there are certain things, nobody does, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, right, do you know anybody in America who drives a electric car, a Tesla, right, on Shabbat? Right? There are, maybe there may be some rabbis who will tell you, you can drive a Tesla on Shabbat, you know what I mean? Because there's no engine there, right? There's no combustion, right? There's no fire. But nobody does it except you. So if they see you doing that, you're gonna get into trouble. You know what I mean? So don't do that. I'm just giving you an example, right? This is a wild example, right? Whatever, something a little bit wild, because I don't know any rabbi who allows to drive a Tesla. But anyway, right? So right, that's the story. So yeah, that's the way it is. So it goes on here. Because therefore, he says, when you're in a place where the custom is different and you're doing it in front of them, right? Don't make waves, just do like they do. You know what I mean? By the way, this doesn't apply also, I have to tell you. It doesn't apply if you have like a Sephardi, community and a Ashkenazi community. You can do, Sephardi customs in front of the Ashkenazim. You know why? Because they know, everybody knows, you're Sephardi, so you don't do like them. Everybody knows that, So they're not going to fight with you. They're not going to say, oh, what are you? You're a Sephardi criminal? Nobody's going to tell you that, right? They know that you're a Sephardi. So that you can do, your own customs, Sephardi customs. Nobody's going to tell you anything about that. Unless what? Unless you're the only Sephardi in the country, right? Which today, by the way, is not very common, Usually most countries have like a Sephardi community and Ashkenazi community. They have both, you know what I mean? In most places, that's the way it is today. Even in Russia, by the way, they have a Sephardi community now. Can you imagine? Even there. So, even in Moscow, right? They have a Sephardi community now. So, if that's the case, nobody's going to fight with you about that. That you're doing, Sephardi customs or Ashkenaz customs, In fact, they're going to try to help you probably, you know what I mean? They're going to say, oh, yeah, that's your custom. Yeah, go ahead, keep that. They know. Okay, so that's what I'm saying, right? Even if they were, they're lenient about something, or all the more so if they're stringent. So it says, even in a place where the custom is not to do labor, all day. Okay, that's a very different issue. So let's look in a Bet Yosef. I don't want to keep you too long, so let's look in a Bet Yosef here and see what he says. Yeah, so we still didn't get up to that tour, so we have to read more in the tour. Let's go on a little bit. A little bit more. So it says the tour here. It says, if he started the labor from yesterday, right? The certain labor, right? From Thursday night, whatever, right? Or I'm not talking about really Thursday. I'm talking about the night before Passover, right? So because Thursday would apply to Shabbat. But anyway, right? It says, so it says, if it's for the needs of the holiday, I can finish it. He says, right? On the eve of the Passover. And Ri explains, he says you can even continue after midday, right? The Ri says. But the Rosh says no, only until midday, right? Not after midday. ואם אינה לצורך המועד, right? So it says if it's not for the needs of the holiday, right? אפילו אם התחיל בה, even if he started it, right, from yesterday, the night before, right? מאתמול לא ייגמר, you shouldn't finish it, right, on the eve of Passover. Interesting. That's what the Torah says, right? So yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, so we'll do the Bet Yosef. At least we'll start it. Let's see how big it is, right? How imposing it is, how intimidating it is here. So it says like this, right? Bet Yosef. ונראה דלא פליג על דברי אביעזר מתמכן כליו לשבת ויום טוב, לאו תופר כאמר, אלא תיקון בעלמא כאמר. So he says, right, that it seems that he's not really arguing on the Avi Ezri that we said before, his opinion, that he's fixing his utensils on Shabbat, Yom Tov, right? Not on Shabbat, right? But for Shabbat and Yom Tov. Lav tofer kama, he's not talking about sewing, he says. Ela tikun be'alma kama, he's talking about fixing something, right? Not sewing. So I guess by sewing, he means like making something new, like a new clothing. We'll see what that means. But the lav melacha gemurahi, because that's not really, he says, that's not really a real labor, right? Fixing something. Okay, so I see what he's saying, right? In other words, he's telling you, if I understand correctly, he's telling you making a new clothing is forbidden. That's like a real labor, But he says, just sewing something up, that got ripped a little bit, hemming something, right? That's not real labor. It's like amateur, like anybody can do that, Any girl can do that, right? Not me, right? I don't know anything about that, but I guess any girl can do it, whatever. So, we call it, that's what he's saying, right? That there's a difference between this and that. Okay. So he says, right, that regarding making a new clothing, you're not allowed to do it, even for yourself. וכותב ספרים, אף על גב דמלאכה היא כיוון לעצמו, בדרך לימודו, כותב. Also regarding the books, like we said, right, you're allowed to write in a notebook, for your notes, right? He says, the reason even though writing is really like a labor, it's called a labor, the writing, but it says, nevertheless, it's allowed. Why? Because since you're doing it for yourself, and it's like for your learning, right? To remember your thoughts, right? In learning, it doesn't really look like you're doing labor, right? But it says if you're doing something which really looks like a labor, for instance, you're sewing, right? Something new. Even for Shabbat, for the sake of Shabbat, for Yom Tov, or for the sake of Yom Tov. וכן כותב ספרים לאחרים אפילו בחינם אסור. So it's also, if you're writing books for somebody else, right, not for yourself, even if you're doing it for free, it says it will be forbidden, to write somebody else's, notes, whatever, right, that will be forbidden. Okay, so let's do the Shulchan Aruch and we'll stop there. So we're going to do bet. It says like this. What was that said? Right? That's only if you're doing labor for profit. Right? But it says you're allowed to fix, right, stuff for Yom Tov. Also, right, if you're writing, as we said, right, your own notebook or something for yourself, for your own purposes, you're allowed to do that. So, right, just to recap this the whole thing, right, to summarize this whole thing, right, what's allowed, what's not allowed, right? So here, what he's telling you is like this. That which we told you that you're not allowed to do labor on the eve of Passover, right, after midday. What is that talking about? It's talking about you're doing either, right, for money, that's one thing, right? Or, right, it says in parentheses here, or you're doing it, it's like a real labor, as we said, right? Something which looks like a real labor. As we said, right, what would be an example? Doing a haircut, right? Or doing, right, or, sewing a new garment, right? That would be a real labor. That looks like real labor. But if you just want to hem, right, your, something which got ripped, your, right, your shirt, whatever it is, right? Your skirt. You want to hem it up, got a little hole there. That you can do. So what's the reason why? There's two things, right? Because you're not doing it from money, number one, and number two, also, it's not real labor. Like, it doesn't look like real labor. It's like amateurish. Doesn't look like something serious. So what about the issue with the books, right? As we said, that you're allowed to take notes for yourself in Torah, and make a notebook for yourself or whatever it is, right? That you can do. But as we said, right, what you're not allowed to do is do this for your friend, even if you're doing it for free, because that looks like labor already. What's the difference? Because when you do it for yourself, it just like looks like something personal. You're doing something for your own personal benefit. But when you do it for somebody else already, it's already, going too far. Even if you're doing it for free. Okay, so I hope you got my drift over here. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll stop here. Okay, so be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Thanks for coming. B'ezras Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. And Chazak u'Baruch, Laila Tov.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
All the best.